So if we look here, we've got video acquisition, live encoding and recording, recording for post-production, and then your file upload. So this is a studio, and then from the studio, I've got different cameras that are going to send a switched output, and I can do a couple different things with that. We can actually send it live, so we do a live stream. We can record it to a computer, we can record it to a hard drive, and then we can edit it, put graphics in it, clean it up, do some other stuff, adjust our audio, and then we can upload it. But in either case, we have to start with the cameras. We have to start with what images am I going to capture. So these are my keys to high quality acquisition. Number one, pretty straightforward. Choose a high quality camcorder. Use consistent, even lighting at the correct color temperature. If you have a lot of light with lights you bought at Home Depot and the guy on the camera looks really funny, it's probably the lights, okay? We laugh, but yeah, I've seen almost everything. You want to utilize interesting shot composition and proper set design. Some of you have probably seen some shots of a talking head with the pastor, and the whole background behind him is black, and the pastor looks like he's a floating element in space. Okay, so we don't want to go that direction. And then the final thing that's often overlooked is providing quality audio with your video. What a lot of churches will do is they'll do their program audio that they've mixed and EQ'd for the room, and they'll send that same feed out to broadcast, and they wonder why it sounds really bad when they watch it back on the internet. It's because you need to put some headphones on and mix for what is actually not in the environment, but what's actually coming out through the signal chain. And if you don't do that, you won't have a good sound. Does that make sense, everybody? What we're talking about? Okay. So here's a really, really good rule. When it comes to producing video for streaming, broadcast, or archival, choosing the right cameras for your vision, environment, and workflow is priority number one. And the reason we say vision, environment, and workflow is because that's different for everybody. Not everybody has the same environment. Some of you might have great lighting, and you can put the cameras right there. Some of you might have bad lighting, and the cameras have to go far away. Some of you have a lot of volunteers, and you can have lots of man cameras. Some of you have hard time getting volunteers, and having robotics might be a good idea. The workflow, am I going to take it for post-production? Am I going to send it directly? All those things play into what's important for you at your facility. Not everybody's going to have the same process with that. But I'll say this again. If you don't start with a good image, guess what? It don't matter. All the rest of that doesn't matter. So if the camera's not capturing a good quality image, you ain't going to fix it. So the challenge is to choose the camera that is right for your application at the right price without shortchanging your ability to do better work in the future. So even though you don't have the budget to get the camera you really want, make sure you get something that's at least going to be good enough that you can upgrade your system and add this. Maybe that from a main camera, you might put that over to a slash camera. There's other options, but just going with the cheapest camera is not going to give you a good solution. So there are a lot of choices. So we have upper left corner, that's a 3-chip robotic camera. Down below it, that's a single-chip robotic camera. These are both Panasonics. Down here, this is a Blackmagic studio camera. This is another Sony studio camera. This is a little small Sony Handycam. This is a Canon HD robotic camera. This is a Hitachi. Actually, I think that's another little Sony Handycam. And this is, of course, the Panasonic 3-chip, 2/3 inch camera with the Digis Super lens on it. Every one of these cameras is an HD output camera. The image that comes out of all these cameras is wildly different, and depending upon the environment that you're going to put them in. I have a lot of people that say, well, gosh, we want to use this Blackmagic camera in a studio because I've seen it at NAB, I've seen it at the shows, it looks great. Well, the issue with that camera is lensing. They've got lots of stuff for it if you want to put the camera 12 feet away, but when you want to put it 50 or 60 feet away, now you got to use all kind of adapters and stuff, and now your image gets real soft. So understanding the specifics of each camera and how it applies to your environment is absolutely critical to not wasting your money. So are there any questions on that? Nobody's got a question yet? Golly. Yes, so that camera right there that's on the upper left, that's probably the camera that's on me. That camera that's in the upper right is that camera right over there with a different lens on the front. That Digis Super 22 is probably a 30 $1,000 lens. So unless you're doing sports at your church, you probably don't need that lens. Now, if you're doing sports, hey, go for that one right there. So here's the kicker, and I'm going to go back to that slide real quick. These are all different cameras. Here's the kicker. Make sure that the camera type, the output type, the recording format, and the resolution are consistent across all your cameras. Because if you mix different types of cameras, it's going to be exceedingly difficult to match them live or in post. And I've got plenty of churches that have gone with, well, see, we can afford one of these today, and then now we're going to buy a robotic over here, and we're going to buy one of those other handy cams because somebody donated it. And they wonder why every time they switch the camera, the pastor's suit changes from gray to green to brown. That's because you have different cameras. And that's a real pain in the neck to try to fix, if not impossible. So the camera chip size and the quantity are critical to displaying crisp images in low light settings. Each camera inside of it has a chip or chips, okay? And there are quantity of chips. I actually took some of these highly technical slides out that explain how the camera actually works and takes image stuff from light and creates it to an electrical environment off of the backside of the chip. But every camera will have a set of chips or a single chip of a varying size. The bigger the chip, the more light they can expose onto it, the more detail you can get in the image. If you have multiple chips, now you've got more than one chip trying to decode the information. The reason that's important is because the combination of chip size and number of chips is going to really indicate how well that camera is going to perform, specifically in low light. So if you take a camera that's got one chip and it's a small chip, and you put it 5 feet away from me, and we could open the aperture of the camera all the way up so all the light's coming into the camera, it'd probably look pretty good. You take that same camera and you put it back there, 40 feet away, and you zoom in on me, you'll see all kind of video noise in my shirt. Image quality look really bad. My shirt might look brown or blue because it can't decode the color properly because there's not enough chips and the chips are not big enough. Does that make sense to everybody? The size of the chip, and that's something you cannot overcome. If the camera is not the right camera for where you physically have to place that camera, you can't fix that. And sometimes you say, we want to go with this or this, and it's just not going to work for you. And there's no sense of spending your money if you put the image out and you look at it like, ooh, that looks terrible. Just don't spend the money. It's the combination of the chips and the light and the distance that's going to equate to how good is that image going to look. And again, the first thing we're talking about is when you zoom in, the aperture on the camera closes, right, to get that zoomed in spot, and that lets less light into the sensor. Now, if I put the camera further back and I have to zoom in, now I got a real small aperture for light to come through to start with. If I don't have great lighting, the image quality is going to be poor. It's a combination of all those factors. So there's no fundamental rule of thumb where I can put a one chip 4K sensor camera back 45 feet and I'm good. It depends on what your lighting is like too.